Good morning, everybody. Good morning. First of all, just want to welcome everybody. As Molly mentioned, my name is Byron Stauffer. I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana County Office of Planning and Development. Also Executive Director of the Indiana County Development Corporation. Molly invited me to speak this morning on the topic of broadband and maybe make some general remarks regarding economic development. First of all, I want to thank the Economic Development Task Force, Sustainable Economic Development Task Force. This is a body that's appointed by the county commissioners, giving it recognition relative to all of our collective planning efforts in the county, and it's certainly a grassroots effort. A lot of community business leaders in the county, and want to thank them personally for all of their efforts and time and talents, and in trying to shepherd some of these discussions, which when this was first started and led by Indiana County Commissioner Shereen Hess, some of these things weren't necessarily mainstream, and it's nice to see some of the discussions that are happening across the country and certainly around the world, talking about sustainability. And it's not a new topic, but sometimes things, when you get out into the rural sectors of the countryside, things tend to be a little slower. So again, I want to commend the task force for their efforts to try to shape some new policy and some new decisions, and inform the decision makers and certainly the residents of the county what some of the opportunities are. Secondly, I'd like to thank Molly for her leadership in providing staff assistance to the task force, and being the staff kind of putting this event on, and certainly all the sponsors, and Molly's mentioned them, so I won't belabor that. I have a few brief minutes to talk to you, so I'll kind of get right into it. So just to give you a little bit brief history on the topic of broadband, and kind of level how we got here. I came to this county in 1996 as a young economic developer, and wanted to work with businesses and commercial enterprises. And one of the first companies that I visited was a company called Breeze Industrial Products down in Tunnelton. They're a union shop, 250 employees. They make hose clamps for all kind of manufacturers, in the aviation, trucking, whatever area. And they're literally in the middle of nowhere, and major company, major operations, and literally, weren't connected to the outside world, but for a phone line and a fax machine, and maybe a T1 line or something like that wasn't very, DSL line that wasn't very efficient. Again, a major employer in this county, not connected. And so that was my first glimpse, in the mid 1990s of, we got a problem here. And so unfortunately, it takes a pandemic for money to be available for expansion of broadband. But I will tell you that the county commissioners and we're being very aggressive along these fronts. And so kind of fast forwarding from the mid 90s to the late 2010, up in that time frame, the county wanted to expand emergency management communications. How first responders with radio handhelds would talk back to their, it's police, fire, ambulance, EMS, back to emergency management and amongst each other in coordination for any kind of emergency event. And so the county undertook basically a $15–16 million effort to improve countywide communications for emergency management. And that entailed putting up new tower sites, point-to-point communications. And what the county did at that time through an RFP process, also connected those towers as much as they could within that $15 million budget, because the county also provided grants to all these police, fire, for the actual Motorola handhelds and all the equipment, and the redundancies that go along with that. And but where we could, connect the tower sites with fiber optic backhauling back to Indiana, out to the different tower sites. We weren't able to get to every tower but the ones we couldn't get to, we had point-to-point microwave communications, but ultimately we got back to fiber and back to Indiana at the Emergency Management Center, in White Township. And so what the county did at that time is we only needed 12 pair of fiber, but the county, through the contract with Salzgiver Telecom, built, in some cases 48 pair or 96 pair, kind of foreseeing into the future that, boy, if we had the opportunity for an internet service provider to either buy or lease those extra fibers that the county didn't need. So we overbuilt the network to the extent that we could. And what that allowed was, again, fast forward to the pandemic, under the CARES Act, what that allowed was for a very quick response, because we had 6 months and the county allocated $2 million. And I don't think it's reflected on these maps. And I apologize for that, but basically, we had a network, in this area, and we were able to branch out into the northern sector of the county with fiber. And that became an opportunity to, again, continually expand the county's network with the Salzgiver Telecom. And that just gives you, so there has been some forward thinking on this for the last, 10, 12, 15 years, but there was no resources. So the county borrowed $15, $16 million, built the network that the county has with emergency management, and then deployed a little over $2 million in CARES Act to expand that, to get it a little further out into the rural sectors. And so this map that you have, and if everybody got the handout as well, it's on the back side of the handout. So I know this isn't very easy to see. That doesn't do the whole county, but so basically, what the county challenged my office to do is to try to get some grant money. So a couple years ago, we wrote a grant for the Appalachian Regional Commission. ARC has been working, in rural areas. The ARC is a federal program, in Appalachia, trying to promote economic development, community development, health, in various aspects. And they created a power initiative program. And so we were able to write a grant. So this map in the purple areas reflects the targeted ARC dollars, $1.5 million. And the county, and these are on the front side, the funding metrics is on the matrix is on the front side of that handout. And the county had to match that with another 1.5. So in these purple areas, there's about $3 million of funding available for broadband deployment. The county also wrote a grant to the CDBG CV program, which is Community Development Block Grant, which is federal money. County gets a bucket of money every year, entitlement funds we refer to it as, and the CV is COVID. So these are COVID dollars, and we had the 2020 census, and all CDBG monies have to be targeted to low, moderate income areas. So based on census data, we were able to target this area up in West Mahoning and South Mahoning Township. So these green or teal lines represent proposed areas that meet that low mod benefit. And so we have $2 million deployed in that area of the county. And that's significant because I mentioned earlier some of the CARES Act money was spent here. So some of these dollars could tie in, county network. And then at the state level, this even goes back to Senator White and now Senator Pittman. We were able to get a $500,000 Keystone Communities Program grant, and that could go anywhere in the county, but we're kind of targeting it for the gray areas that are non-ARC. Okay, so because again, this is a countywide initiative, and then the county itself has earmarked some of its ARPA money and some of its general fund dollars, and as I mentioned earlier, matching the ARC, but have put in an additional $1.5 million. So all in total, with the 1.5 million ARC, the 2 million CDBG CV, the 500,000 Keystone Communities grant, and an additional 1.5 million of county funding, we have a total of $7 million. So this summer we put out an RFP, and just in the last couple of weeks we got a mound of information and responses to that RFP. So county commissioners, myself, and some other staff, we're combing through all of these proposals. We sent it out to 10 or 12 that we've been working with over the last couple of years. We got 6 proposals back. So some did not respond, but very, very glad for the few that did, and we're very excited for what's going to come here in the next couple of weeks as we start to award those contracts and the commissioners consider those. The other thing I wanted to point out is these other areas, this golden color, this green, and these blues. These are what's referred to as RDOF, or the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund dollars. These were grants issued by the FCC to various ISPs. So the green is ComNet. The blue is actually SpaceX. SpaceX is the satellite-based internet provider, and Windstream is the gold color. Because some of these grants are so limited, there's a restriction placed on grantees, such as Indiana County, and it notes that RDOF areas, we're really not in a position to spend some of these grants in duplicate. So these RDOF areas are getting funded to deploy broadband with their respective networks. So we're not trying to duplicate, we're not in a position to create competitive environment. We're simply trying to serve unserved areas of the county and underserved areas of the county. What do I mean by underserved? Underserved means if you have something less than 120 by 20, or something, if you have DSL service, or if you have another type of satellite that doesn't meet, but we're using a threshold established by the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority. And that is a state-based authority created by the legislature and the governor to take federal monies and deploy them within the state. So what we've done here is we probably have tens of millions of dollars of projects sitting back at the planning office, under review. We have $7 million. And so we're going to do our best to geographically disperse the money. We've been so fortunate that people have been reaching out to us, been calling your legislator, calling your state senator, calling the commissioner's office, coming to meetings like this. The county commissioners held 3 public informational meetings this year. We've received petitions. We've received, people stopped in the office, I need broadband, and we're coming. It just, appreciate everybody's patience. It takes time. This is complicated. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made, and it's complex. One of the things, if you're using a fiber-based system, it takes poles, and if you drive on some of these country roads, some of these poles aren't very tall, and there's some requirements that, where your electric and your telephone lines, there has to be so much spacing in between fiber, because it becomes interference, it becomes issues. And so in some cases, we're having to go in and replace miles of pole lines. That becomes very expensive. So we're really trying to, work with Penelec, work with REA, work with Verizon. Some of these are Verizon poles. Because some of these poles are probably past their useful life. But we're kind of being asked to pay for new poles when so we're trying to develop partnerships. And that's what I've told the ISPs. I'm not looking for people just to come in and be a vendor. We're looking for partners. So we're also looking for them to put some money in. The way we've deployed it in the past with CARES Act is, and even the earlier, Salzgiver's done some expansions to the county network, where we put the main line in and then the ISP does the connection, for example, with that lateral from the main line into the home, whether that's, overhead, underground. And we generally try to go about 300 feet at no cost to the resident. So some of these farms, some of these places may be way back. So we may have to, have some partnerships, but that's in a nut where we are with broadband, and we're not stopping till we get as much coverage as we can get. So this $7 million isn't the end. We're going to have projects ready to go. We're going to have other projects that we're not going to be able to fund with this initial $7 million. And so we're going to have to go after other funding. And so we're going to see what happens with the Pennsylvania Broadband Development Authority. There's going to be other federal opportunities, and we're going to be as aggressive. The commissioners have said they want to be as aggressive as we can be, to go after as much money and try to get every resident. So the other thing I didn't mention, I mentioned the community participation, which is very much welcome. All of these diamonds that are on this map are reflective of inquiries that we've received either through, as I mentioned, a legislator, a senator, a commissioner is in a meeting, and we're mapping these through our through the planning office GIS team, and that's how these maps are developed. Josh Krug and Molly, help with these maps. But it can get very, very confusing. There's a lot of layers here, and but we're really excited about where we're at. Broadband is no longer a luxury. It's like having electricity or water or sewage or anything else. So in order for us to be competitive, in order for us to have, the pandemic has established that remote working is an opportunity. A lot of our financial institutions, back office operations can be done at home. Want to go to school. I got calls from superintendents and school districts, and families are having to drive to the parking lot of the school to get their internet, do their homework. We're hearing all of these stories, telehealth, and young people that need, the internet for certain things with their doctors and seniors and everybody. So just being connected is just so vitally important to our long-term growth and our potential here. And one of the things I always write into my grants, it's kind of frustrating, is you see these urbanized areas and they're talking 5G. So one of my canned sentences in the grant writing is, it's really great that areas of the country are getting 5G, but the reality is there's many parts of Indiana County that have 0G. And it just highlights in my mind, and it's not trying to be sarcastic or smart aleck, but it's just to make the point where people, and these are very expensive systems, and even when they're employed, the other thing that we're sensitive to is the cost, not to just deploy it, but the monthly cost at the end. So again, we're looking for partners, but it's $65, $75, and SpaceX, it's $110 a month after you pay the $600 for the kit. Okay, and so so I think there's going to be some fallout. It's like, okay, I have broadband, but now I can't afford it. And that's going to be a reality that, but these are very expensive systems to maintain. It's equipment, it has to be replaced. Back at, where the signals emanate from, but we're moving forward. So I'm glad to answer any questions. But before that, how much time do I have now? I don't know what time. But kind of just some general economic development topics I just wanted to maybe share with you. In addition to the broadband, we are, in a situation where, again, I came here in '96, coal was king, there was even some iterations of coal, electric generation, the 3 power plants are in the county, and Keystone right over the border, natural gas, you had the Halliburton and SW Jack, and, our natural resource economy, it's totally changing. We've heard the discussions on RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and it's the sheer market of what's going on. Marcellus Shale, is maybe good for the gas industry. It decimated, our natural gas, economic base here. Halliburton's gone, SW Jack's gone, all the fracking companies are gone. There's not a lot of drilling any longer. Our Act 13 fees are dropping off the table. So there's change afoot. Even again, thanks to IUP for hosting us today. Major transitions, in the AshiNet system, and I don't know the exact number, but 100 faculty and staff, plus or minus a few. I know there's been some ups and downs there on some of the staffing, but kind of resizing from 15,000 students down to 86, 87, 88, 8,900 students, something sub 9,000. That's a change, and that ripples through the economy. Whether it's student housing, local stores, retail, restaurants, bars, it ripples through the economy. So that's a major change. So our major anchor businesses, our major anchor sectors are going through a transition. So what do we do about that? Again, COVID hits, trying to, help as many businesses we can survive the pandemic. So again, a lot of targeted resources, deploying grants, low interest loans, some cases, zero interest loans. We were able to get, we were invited to apply. The county's been fortunate over the last 30 years. We've had EDA, Economic Development Administration funded revolving loan funds. They gave us a grant of 1.23 million. And then we were able to deploy that as zero interest loans. And when those loans are repaid, then that goes into our revolving loan fund to be relent to other small businesses. Back in the day, some of those funds came in for Durrell. And Durrell repaid those funds, and we were able to redeploy those to many businesses throughout the county. Levity, everybody likes to go to Levity. Distributing spirits, some of our manufacturers have all gotten revolving loan funds over the years to help start up or help expand. So we're certainly targeting new opportunities. The county's invested heavily through the Indiana County Development Corporation, through our business parks. We were able to help Krebs a number of years ago after their devastating fire out of Windy Ridge. And then a couple of years ago, 2017, 2018, we were able to, because we had the business park with ready to go roads, water tank, all the infrastructure, we were able to bring in Urban Outfitters, almost 1 million square foot distribution center down to corporate campus. That was a field when I came here. We put up a couple buildings. We have some good tenancy down there, and we had biotech for a while, and that's transitioning to MBI, and some other great businesses down there as well. The 119 Business Park. I'm really excited. Maybe next year's summit I'll be able to go into some of the details. But we're looking at some biogas project down there, working with some of our local farmers. And so there's a lot of opportunities that are here. We're competing for grant monies to make some of these infrastructure investments. We're trying to assist, power plants through their transition. I think we look back, 5, 10, 15 years from now, what did we do collectively to step up and work with these businesses and try to make job opportunities here. We're also working on workforce development initiatives, working with Aaron, working with the school districts. And then this is all going to culminate into an economic and workforce development plan that you all will be hearing about and be invited to participate in as well. So, are there any questions out there on any subject matters that I mentioned? Yes, sir.
A lot of money is coming for transitions to electrical, non-fossil fuel industries, and I'm wondering to what extent Indiana County is seeking those monies coming from the federal government. The climate change bill that Joe Manchin and Joe Biden negotiated is what I'm thinking about, but I'm just wondering what monies Indiana County might be able to meet from that.
Well, we've been meeting, with our federal delegation to try to get a clearer understanding. Some of those monies are still in the yet to be deployed phase, but we're also working regionally. Very exciting project is the award that the Southwest region received, $62.7 million. To try to transition under the Build Back Better Regional Challenge to try to transition our regional economy into robotics and artificial intelligence, AI. So a very targeted segment. IUP has $1 million of that money to try to help their steam shop grow. There's some other funds that collectively the county is competing for. I've also already, we've been meeting with Congressman Thompson, Senator Casey's office. We've already started discussions with Congressman Reschenthaler, who will be taking a large portion of the county and working with our power plants and some of our energy business sectors to try to see what those dollars are and try to build that capacity and infrastructure. There was another question? Yes, Captain.
Two disparate questions, Byron. On the map, with respect to the request for service, it looks like some of these are clustered. So does this reflect an organized effort on the part of people in certain areas, and certain areas you might expect we would want to have service like that in the southeastern part of the county versus no request for service? So that's one question. The second question is with respect to the transition of the Western Pennsylvania economy. We see articles about a hydrogen hub. What is it?
Well, so to answer your first question, Bill, yeah, there's certainly, some areas that have gotten together and done petitions versus just one-off resident phone calls. There's some areas that we know that don't have it, and so we've been meeting with them, and we didn't necessarily put a dime for, but the areas that we've marked, particularly in the purple, are areas that we know that we need service, and then this gray area here, again, we have the county match and Keystone Communities, 2 million to try to deploy here. So I think it's somewhat of a concerted effort, but somewhat also just the need and the desire for it. There are some areas that are Amish, in certain areas and everything else, but like North Mahoney, there's a lot of RDOF area there, and there's nothing that we can do, and that's going to come over the next 2, 3, 4 years, some of these areas. So again, this isn't a quick fix. It's going to take time, but again, we're targeted on the whole county. Relative to the hydrant hubs, I think we're going to be learning a lot more about that. The region, similarly to the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, is organizing. I've had discussions with some of the firms that are kind of assembling the partners within these hubs, but there's $8 billion, I believe, that's available for these hubs. And again, it's another fuel source to try to do electric generation and another power. Fusion is another one that's out there. Obviously nuclear, and then there's a lot of different opportunities with different fuel sources. Obviously coal, even from a market level, you can't even get coal. I mean, it's hard to get coal for making steam. All right, and the cost of which to get it is very expensive. So even just from a market rate, it's just hard to survive. But we're fortunate, that we're trying to get a runway, because what Reggie does is push us off the cliff, making us outsource our electric generation to other states. Our electric prices are going to go up. Okay, and that's just the reality, and that makes Pennsylvania not competitive. You see the legislature trying to offset some of that by changing the CNI tax, the corporate net income tax, and start doing it. We have to make Pennsylvania competitive. We can do all the business parks and all the roads and all the broadband, but if our tax base isn't, if our utility costs aren't competitive, we're not going to bring in industry. We're not going to bring in manufacturing. And so it takes everybody at the table to think through, what kind of Commonwealth do we want to be, let alone what kind of country or what kind of county we want to be. So, we're working through all these issues that are very complex, but basically, Bill, they're just forms of energy, and we're exploring them all. We're having active meetings with all of our electric generation partners. These are assets, okay? They shouldn't be vilified as being bad, okay? Having a grid, and what's unique about Homer City that we're trying to sell, in addition to being able to sell electricity throughout the PJM grid, okay, it can sell to the New York grid. That opens up all kinds of markets to the northeast. All right, that's an asset that we don't want to lose. We just need to figure out how to power it.
I'd like to get more information on the 0% loans and a point person to talk to.
Okay, well, again, welcome. I hope you, some other speakers following, it'll be very, very exciting to learn about some of the things. One thing that I did mention as it relates to IUP, one of our projects, because of the decline in students, is the ICDC's acquired the Carriage and Essex House. So I'm very, very excited to friends with Pennsylvania CPACE here, talking about that program, and we've been able to work with them and look forward to working with them in the future. So I think there's a lot of great things happening, but we all have to embrace change. And what we're trying to accomplish is a transition that doesn't see massive job loss without some thoughtful approach to how we transition. And some of the policies out of Harrisburg and DC could force us into very high unemployment. We're trying to prevent that and push back so that we have a reasonable transition to allow some of these sectors to transition, some of these family sustaining jobs, and bring in other opportunities. So that's our approach. And really glad for you to be here, and I'm glad to answer any questions throughout the day. Thank you.
This will be the last question.
Sure.
Okay, and then we'll start with our next speaker.
You mentioned Build Back Better. How will President Biden's infrastructure plan impact Indiana County and Western Pennsylvania and other areas of Pennsylvania in your efforts?
Thank you for that question. Well, I just want to be careful in distinguishing, the Build Back Better Regional Challenge was a sub-grant program under the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration. The Build Back Better program that I know the president was, did not move forward. I know there's another iteration of it. So again, we're meeting with our legislators, looking at water projects, sewer projects, road projects, stormwater projects, all those infrastructure, kinds of things. So a lot of those will be deployed. Some of it will be broadband funding. So we're being very aggressive. We have a long track record of bringing in federal monies. Some of our challenges will be matched. We were able, because of ARPA and just some thoughtful financial management of the county, to be able to put in the 3 million. But a lot of these programs require match. And so that's where some of our limitations are. So we oftentimes can match it with state money. So again, we're working with our state delegation and our federal delegations. There's a lot of coordination at very high levels to make sure that if there's grant opportunities, that we can leverage resources from state, federal, and back and forth. You always got to have skin in the game. But most times if you have you need cash, not match. That's in kind. So we're going to be very aggressive. Some of those programs are still in deployment phase. So over the next 6 months, we anticipate we'll be writing a lot of grants. We have a lot of projects that we're developing with our water authorities, sewer authorities, a lot of our municipalities. So again, a lot of coordination and trying to prioritize those projects and seek that money. So that story is yet to be written, but we're going to be very aggressive in seeking out those resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Byron, and thank you guys for those wonderful questions.